Hi, folks. So I'm happy to present to you the City Project book series, which is a series of books which the first book came out last year, last May. And so we are now have two books out, third one coming out in May. So it'll be officially a series then. But the reason behind the series is to basically anybody who's been paying attention, North American cities have been struggling over the past couple of decades, and Winnipeg is no exception. But all is not lost. We recognize that there is a path forward for not only Winnipeg, but all cities towards more sustainability, more equality, more justice for everyone. And so the book series essentially imagines what a sustainable city looks like and what we would like to see, 50 years from now. It's organized in short books. The idea is each one is kind of something that you can power through in an afternoon, kind of like a TED Talk, but in book format, so that anybody who is interested in having a better city can find it accessible and can get through it pretty quickly and get a good introduction to all of the different components that go into making a sustainable city. Now, Jane Jacobs says that cities have the capability of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created by everybody. And so inspired by that, our book series is also created by many people. Each book is authored by a different local author, using Winnipeg as kind of a case study. So the topics you'll learn about are universally applicable to North American cities, but global cities, even though we're using Winnipeg as the example. And so my book was the first one to come out. It was last May. It was on municipal finance. It is on municipal finance, and that's on purpose because finance is sort of the glue that holds together the gears of your city. And so it was a natural first introductory topic to get to sort of understand how all of the other pieces will fit together. Then the next topic after that is Patty's book. We also have a third one coming out and a fourth one in the fall. We're really excited. We've got about 5 in total in the pipeline. We're hoping to do 1 or 2 books a year going forward. And so we're very excited. That is the series in a nutshell. And so we hope that you will enjoy the little excerpts that Patty and I will be presenting today. And we're happy to move into Q&A afterwards, answer all your questions. So again, I'm Michel Durand-Wood. I am the series editor, which basically means I am curating the topics and finding the authors and finding the different voices to come and tell the different stories that are part of this series. And as it turns out, because I get to choose, I chose myself as the first author. So all our books are available in print through Great Plains Press. They are available at the bookstore here at the University of Winnipeg, as well as McNally Robinson, and basically everywhere you buy books in Canada and the US, both in person and online. But we do suggest or highly recommend that you support your local bookstores, local independent bookstores, whenever you can. It is available in print and in ebook. I will be reading from ebook, even though you can't even tell from here, but that is what I'll be reading to you today. So I'm reading from You'll Pay for This, How We Can Afford a Great City for Everyone Forever. Introduction. If you're reading this, you probably care about your city. I do too. That's why I wrote this book. Sorry, that was confusing. I wrote this book because I care about my city. I didn't write it because you care about your city. I mean, I'm really glad you care about your city, and I wish your city well, but it's not why I wrote this book. Yeesh, not after a great start. 1 paragraph in and I've already hurt your feelings. I'm sorry, this is the first time I've written a book. Can we start over? If you're reading this, you've noticed that Winnipeg, like most other cities in North America, is facing significant challenges these days. And like me, you've noticed that it's been happening for a while. The service cuts, the tax increases, the neglected infrastructure. Whether your city is Winnipeg or some other city facing the same challenges, you've likely asked yourself why the city never seems to have the money to do what it's supposed to do. From budget to budget, each year seems to be an exercise in deciding which service to cut, which pool to close, which library hours to shorten, which infrastructure to neglect, how much of a tax increase to give. But even with all those cuts, even with the tax increases, and even with all that new growth on the edges of the city, we never seem to get ahead. Things definitely seem like they're trending for the worse. And why is that? And in all its 150-year history, was it always like this? Yikes, that's a pretty depressing start to a book, especially for one that's supposed to be about municipal finance. Municipal finance is supposed to be fun, don't you think? Sorry, let me try again. If you're reading this, you're probably not an accountant. I know that because most people aren't accountants. It might seem obvious in the same sense as most people aren't a professional hockey player or the billionaire owner of a tech company or a superhero in red and blue spandex with spider-like powers who fights crime at night to the ire of the local newspaper editor. Clearly, those are all a very, very small proportion of the total population. So it's the same for accountants. In fact, Certified Professional Accountants of Canada, CPA Canada, reports having 210,000 members as of 2024. Given that the total population of Canada is estimated by Stats Can to be just over 41 million, that means only 0.5% of Canadians are accountants. And it's the same in the US. The US Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates that there are 1.5 million accounting jobs in the country. Out of a population of 335 million, that gives us just a bit shy of 0.5% of Americans being accountants. So, since 99.5% of you are not accountants, I wasn't really going out on a limb, was I? Now, by grouping accountants in with superheroes, I'm not necessarily saying that accountants are superheroes. I mean, I'm not saying it. Who knows what spandex lurks in the closets of accountants? But what I am saying is that finance is hard for most people, and that for those who can understand it, well, it's kind of like having a superpower. And even if we assume that an equal number of people who currently aren't accountants understand finance as well as accountants do, that still leaves 99% of people who don't, and that's a lot of us. So I'll tell you why that's important. Our city, all cities actually, provide a lot of services that are critical to our lives and well-being. Provides clean drinking water and sewage treatment, public safety, sanitation, transportation, and so much more. It also provides quality of life amenities like recreation options, libraries, and green spaces. But all of those things cost money. And if our city is going to be able to keep providing not only the quality of life services, but the critical life-sustaining ones too, we're going to need to make sure that the money is there. Not only today, not only tomorrow, but forever. Unfortunately, if 99% of people in general don't have a firm grasp of city finance, or any finance, how can we be sure? After all, that means that despite their very best intentions, 99% of the voting public, 99% of local journalists reporting on city issues, 99% of city staff, and 99% of council members likely don't know nor have any way to check either. That's not anyone's fault, but it should still be addressed. Luckily, it's not that it can't be understood. Despite what you think or what you may have been told, it's not too hard for the average person to understand. It's just never been properly explained to you until now. So buckle up, friends. Using Winnipeg as a case study, we're going to take a literary trip together to learn to follow the money, how to make sure this city, or your city, can afford to be the best it can be, and how to continue to pay for it for all time. No spandex necessary. Although it's fine if you want to. You know why. And on the off chance that you actually are an accountant, well, read on anyway, because maybe you'll still learn a new twist on an old concept. At the very least, you don't want to be left out of book club. The snacks are always so delicious. To be continued in the book. So now that you've had a little taste of book one, I would like to invite Patty over to give us a little introduction of herself and a little taste of book two.
All right, my name is Patty Wiens, and I moved here from Brazil when I was 17 years old. I started riding my bike to work because I refused to pay for parking. When winter came, I decided I wasn't going to stop riding. That was 4 winters ago, and that's how I ended up here on this stage. I'm Winnipeg's first bicycle mayor. For today, I'd like to read a couple of pages of this book for you and hopefully inspire you to get out on your bike and pay attention to what's going on at City Hall. I love, love, love my bikes, but there are days I wish I could go back to not knowing so much. If at the end of this conversation you're feeling the same, come talk to me. And I'm going to take down your information and let you know how you can turn your frustrations into action. I'm going to read a couple of different parts of the book just to give you a little taste. This book is also available in print or ebook, but today you get the audiobook. Whenever I hear people saying that would never work here, I'm always intrigued about what exactly they think that Winnipeg is so unique for. I come from a city slightly larger than Winnipeg and have traveled to places much bigger and much smaller, where people have tried and succeeded at changing streets for the better. On a recent trip to São Paulo, Ian and I were fortunate to spend 2 days with local activists Jorge Queiroz and Rogério Vidueda, who gave us a little history of bike lanes in the city of 23 million people. One bike lane in particular is the bike postcard of the city, spanning 2.8 kilometers and placed right in the middle of the boulevard due to space constraints and heavy foot traffic on the sidewalks. When this bike lane was inaugurated in 2015, there was a Facebook page dedicated to the celebration and people RSVP'd to attend. When more than 30,000 people signed up, the mayor decided it was too risky to keep the street open to cars. So a street closure was announced and a big party ensued. The closure was such a hit that 2 weeks later, when the other half of the bike lane was inaugurated, another street closure was implemented. The businesses thrived and people came from all corners of the big city to celebrate. When city officials realized that there was no pushback from drivers and traffic in the neighborhood streets didn't really become extra congested, they decided to close it every Sunday from then on. It's truly an attraction now, like the frozen river at the Forks in the winter, and like how I imagine Provencher Boulevard and other major streets like Portage Avenue could be if we can just give it a try. A little closer to home, each summer, Montreal pedestrianizes some of its busiest thoroughfares, and they become open-air markets surrounded by restaurants, patios, shops, attracting tourists and locals alike. This project has been such a boon for business that the mayor's office announced 8 no-car avenues across the city for 2025. The success the Fork sees every winter on the frozen river with its loyal and enthusiastic crowds is proof that we crave walkable, bikeable spaces, and we're willing to walk on water and even endure minus 25 Celsius to enjoy it. So don't tell me it wouldn't work here. It already does. The power of local. It's easy to focus on national politics, especially now, but the issues that shape our daily lives, like safe streets, are decided at the local level. Real change begins by understanding how City Hall works and who holds the power. Without understanding the process, it all just looks like a lot of boring meetings with agendas that might as well be written in Klingon. Ian loves to watch city council committee meetings. He often has the City of Winnipeg YouTube channel running in the background while he's working on the computer or making supper. Nerdy, yes. But in watching these meetings, we're able to learn a lot about our elected leaders. One, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to be a city councillor. In fact, if you're reading this and thinking that you're not smart enough or qualified enough, please do me a favor and watch any of your city's council meetings. And you will see councillors for what they really are, regular people just like you. Number 2, you can see which councillors are fully present and which ones spend the meeting on their phones. You can learn a lot by watching how councillors behave during delegations. Are they paying attention? Do they seem to always get up for a bathroom break when faced with dissatisfied presenters? Or is that just for when I'm presenting? You will learn if your counselor, number 3, you will learn if your counselor is truly representing their constituents or furthering their personal agenda, personal projects. Pay attention to the language they use to refer to people. Are they citizens or problems? Does your counselor put safety of their constituents over convenience? Does the mayor? Number 4, the disparity in female versus male counselor often makes it difficult for the women to make themselves heard. So, elect wisely and watch closely. If your representative isn't representing you, make sure to get behind a candidate who has proven themselves able to engage in the community. We need more women and racialized people representing us at City Hall. Winnipeg has had a female mayor in the past, and maybe it's time for another one. And that's that.
I will hand it over to Dr. Gino D'Stasio to moderate with Patty and Michelle.
There we go. I didn't realize there was a comfy pillow behind me. I may nod off. Thank you both for that wonderful introduction to the almost series in the making. I look forward to the third book, the trilogy, I suppose. I have lots of questions. I mean, it's almost dangerous having an urbanist moderator
point.
here.
The perfect person.
I'm not sure if I can ask questions more than just go into monologue about cities. So.
That's fine too.
But, you know, I will say, and maybe this is just a question for either one of you, because you'd mentioned Jane Jacobs, and I look back and think there's few urban writers who have withstood the test of time. And in Life and Death in 1960, when Jane challenged modern city planners, basically really calling into question how we were building cities incorrectly, how we were destroying neighborhoods with freeways to improve access at any cost, and then eventually coming to Canada and really, again, waging that war against the, the freeway, the Spadina freeway in Toronto. A highlight for me, just sorry, and I'll get to a question, but a highlight for me was when, but when our past mayor, Glenn Murray, a few back, invited Jane Jacobs to Winnipeg, and I got to meet her. And I guess the first question maybe is, because at that time, I don't know, what would Jane think about the city today in terms of where we're going and this balance between wanting good urbanism, more walkability, the cost of it, trying to undo things? So maybe a thought is, how does Jane see the city today? And maybe, I don't know if you have any reflection on that, and then I'll dig a little deeper.
I can start, and then you can go. I think that we shouldn't let her watch any of the city council meetings, for one, because she would get frustrated with the red tape. She would get frustrated with how many rounds of how many surveys we need to send out, how much opinion we need to hear about doing the right thing. I think that would be the really frustrating thing, is that we keep having to do these surveys to find out if people really want to feel safe out there, when we should just do the right thing. I think that's number one. You?
Oh yeah. I think Jane Jacobs, I think the power in her approach was that she was kind of an outsider, and so was able to bring a fresh eye to it. And I think what she recognized in observing the city and observing people in the city was that cities and neighborhoods are complex places. They're not merely complicated. right? Something that's complicated can be understood and can be distilled down to different components, and you can tinker with it. And you can know that this part does this, and when I take this part out, it does this. But when something's complex, there are too many interdependent relationships to really truly understand it. And I think one of her major comments, towards planners of the time, and to some extent planners and engineers and the professionals that work in our cities nowadays, is that it's not merely a machine that we can have certain things, inputs changed to get certain outputs. We have to treat it as the ecosystem that it is, right? You can't just eliminate this insect and not have it have all kinds of unforeseen repercussions. And I think we're still caught in a way of proceeding where we still think we can control the city, where we can build this piece of infrastructure, or we can do this project, or we can change the zoning, and we can understand the machine that is a city and know what the outcomes will be. Where we need to approach it with a lot more humility, is I think was Jane Jacobs' kind of approach, is we need to step back and just know that we have to take things in very small incremental steps and adjust as we go. I think that's so I think that's where Jane would want us to go, I think. I don't have a Ouija board, so I don't know for sure. I haven't talked to her.
I know. I still always have a few readings from Jane in the classes I teach. On a different note, and maybe this is kind of just a bit more of a pivot, but it kind of struck me the other day. I was commuting in, by car, and there was a dialogue on the radio, morning radio, I think it was morning. I was quite ill last week, so I'm not sure on the time, okay? Dialogue on the radio, early morning, talking about the bike lane on Wellington, okay? And this discussion got kind of odd because it was the host on the radio talking about how disruptive the bike lane was. Cyclists didn't quite understand the neighborhood, cost too much. And I know we've talked about cost, and I thought to myself, on thinking about this, some of our largest capital projects, from water and sewer, but billions of dollars on roads and pavement, and then we're talking about costs for bike lanes versus whether they're needed or not. And I know that, I think in the book you talked to about mode shift. I know in that. So how do we? It's a big question, but how do we reconcile that? The cost of infrastructure, pavement versus bike lanes versus just trying to get people on board.
So glad you asked. Last week at Public Works, the temporary bike lane was voted down because they didn't get enough feedback from the neighborhood. Oh, how do they really feel about this temporary bike lane? And one of the comments that Jim Brzezowski, who is the director of Public Works, made was, look, the best feedback we can get is to put safe temporary infrastructure up and then make modifications. Instead of spending 5.6 million putting something permanent and then being stuck with it, let's spend 400,000 and do this now. We have the materials, let's go. And then when we realize that this corner didn't work out the way we wanted, it's very cheap to just move a barrier, and then when we're ready for the permanent design, it will be, well-educated design. A bike lane costs so much less than a whole, expansion of lanes for cars. And the thing about bike lanes is that they require very little maintenance year-round. Yes, they need to get plowed, but so do roads. But bike lanes generally don't get potholes because you're not getting that heavy vehicle traffic on it, right? And it's what the effect of a bike lane, especially a temporary one, is that it reduces the visual clutter or the visual, highway, the feeling of the highway on Wellington Crescent especially. So drivers would have to naturally slow down because they would be a little bit more constrained in their space. So the bike lane, in this case, this temporary bike lane, would do those two things. It would allow cyclists to feel safe on that 1.3 kilometers stretch. And it would allow, for residents that live in the area to not feel so threatened by the high speed of vehicles. And then also, give feedback, because the city does hear back from citizens when something doesn't really work. So it would work as all of these things. And I think it's a very small investment. I mean, think about it. Can you buy a house for less than 400,000? And that's how much this bike lane would cost really right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you're talking about money. I think what you're pointing out in that discussion on the radio is kind of the discussion we have all over the city, all the time, when we talk about infrastructure investments or whether we're getting good value for our money at the city. Once you're in that 1% of people who understand municipal finance, you recognize that, like, oh wow, nobody understands this, and it's a problem, because when we talk about what we want, devoid of what they cost, it's a meaningless conversation, right? You go to a restaurant, and if there's no prices on the menu, like, you'll just, oh yeah, of course I want the lobster, or of course I want this. But once you see the pricing, then maybe you're like, you know what, I'm just going with the cheeseburger instead, and you'll be happy with the cheeseburger because you'll have made your own judgment of like how much money you have and what it is worth to you to spend on whichever thing. And one of the things that we don't understand as a community, as a society, as a population, is how much things cost in an infrastructure basis, and what it means in the big picture. If only somebody wrote a book about municipal finance. But no, seriously, because of all the infrastructure that we own in the city, 88% of it is just for the roads and the pipes, right? That is like almost 90%, and that's a standard number for a North American city, somewhere between 85 and 90%, and it's just for the roads and pipes. The other 10 to 15% is everything else: fire trucks, libraries, pools, transit buses, laptop computers, city hall, recreation, like everything else. And 85%, 88% in Winnipeg is just roads and pipes, like where we put stuff and how we travel between that stuff, right? And so when we see that cost and we look at what alternatives could be, is from a financial perspective, the answers kind of come to us as like, oh yeah, of course we can't expand this road. We have to put in a bike lane because that'll move more people in less space with less expense. But you got to be able to see the big financial picture for that. So find your favorite book on municipal finance and read it.
So just to follow up on that, we have an election coming up this year, municipal election. Just sort of popped into mind. So what do you tell the potential candidates either running for council or mayor? What is the one or two things from each of your books that could help inform some platforms or influence where some of the election discussion could go?
I think the common theme would be the financial, and how small changes, small inexpensive changes, are the best way to start something and find out if it works or not. To put the safety of humans before the convenience of drivers of cars also would be something that would be high on the priority list for me, and should be, I think.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm going to talk about financial part as well, but yeah, I think to bring back also sort of the Jane Jacobs approach is that Jane Jacobs, when she was first starting to write about these kinds of things, like she was already looking at 25 years of kind of a major shift in how we built and designed cities, and she was already at that point seeing that no, this is the wrong way, and so now we are 80 years into that experiment, and so we have a lot more hindsight to be able to like, yeah, that was really a mistake. But it would be an equal mistake to think that we can come in with grand solutions and fix it all at once, right? It took 80 years to get here. It's going to take, well, hopefully not 80 years, but it's going to take a while to redirect, right? We have to be humble, and we have to take small corrective actions, which is why temporary changes such as a bike lane is actually the best approach, right? We compare it to Calgary. Calgary installed an entire bike network in their downtown, and they did it temporarily several years ago. It was just all temporary movable traffic signals, cones, and they set it all up and they had it up for 18 months. And during those 18 months, they tweaked. They made over 100 changes over the 18 months. And at the end of the 18 months, everybody was satisfied with what they had in place. Drivers, cyclists, pedestrians, businesses. And only then did they make that permanent, right? Contrast that to the approach that we have now where it's study, and then maybe put in some big thing, try a major grand solution, right? So it has to be, we're talking about a completely different approach to building cities. It's moving away from the grand solutions and toward a more humble, incremental approach that we're just always improving, right? If we improve everything by 1% this year and then 1% next year and 1% next year, eventually, 5-10 years later, we've got some real progress, as opposed to the current approach, which is 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, maybe 25, but maybe minus 10. We don't know, right? And so it's a low risk financial approach, but it's also the only approach that we can actually do and get the results that we're looking for.
Hazel Boris, works at the city. She calls it, what's the next biggest little thing that we can do to affect change? And if you start tackling those biggest little things that make a change in somebody's life, in the citizens, in the city, in the residents, that's how you're going to affect real change over time.
That's good. One more small question, then maybe we'll go to the audience and I'll come back with a couple. But I always think of this, you finish something, now you write your paper, you write a book. Just one question to both of you. Is there, in thinking back at the project so far, is there a chapter you think you could have included or maybe would have written a little bit differently now that you kind of had some time to kind of digest the book? Or maybe it's kind of a weird question, but I'm just wondering because I know a third book is coming, but is there something that you kind of, I should have, if I could have?
I might have included more recipes. No, of course, I think for everybody, and when you're writing, you're never really satisfied. And as soon as you've written it, you wish something else was different. We had hard length limits. The publisher was like, it's this many pages and that's it. So make it fit. And so, there's a lot of stuff we would have liked to include, but at the same time, those limitations actually make for something, is I think a better book. It really was very important that these be something that remain accessible for everybody, right? And reading a municipal finance book that's like this thick is like not, who's going to jump into that? But like a little pocket book that you can read on the bus or on a Sunday afternoon, that's the kind of series we wanted for every single topic, whether it's cycling or urban forestry or finance or all of those pieces. So I think that yes, there's probably stuff that we would do differently or I would do differently, but at the same time, cities are never finished. And hopefully this book series will never be finished. So we'll have other opportunities to keep adding to it and keep, maybe there'll be a second municipal finance book, number 7 or 8 or 10, I don't know. But yeah, there's we kind of hope that it just stands as its own as a whole body of work, right? That you don't get too hung up on one particular, but that together they fit and show you what a city is. Same as, again, like a city, every little thing, there's little mistakes throughout the city, but as a whole, the city becomes this beautiful, lovely thing for everybody.
I think for my book, one of the books that I read a long time ago that really kind of opened my eyes in a way that once you see, you can't unsee was Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. And as I ride my bike, I can't help but have that book in the back of my mind. And writing this book inspired me to want to find out more about women's experiences in their cities, and which is why I started my podcast called That's Her Problem. And I've been talking to women from all over the world. I've done 21 episodes. So I've interviewed 21 women, and I feel like if there was something I could have done more is to write a whole book probably at this rate about women's relationships with their communities and how different that experience is than the experience that men have. And even in this day and age, it's a very different experience, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. And I think that that's something that I would have done more of, is dug a little deeper. But I get to dig a little deeper on my podcast, and I get to really understand these perspectives. But I feel like there's another book there.
Book 11.
I'm gonna ask a bit of a follow-up, and again, sorry, just having media on the top of mind. One of the things that has been coming up in the last week or so is this rising sense of being unsafe in the downtown. Coalitions coming together. Today, even the transit union, this sense of just not feeling safe. And I guess through that lens, we could look at it through gender, but from the perspective of your work and a cyclist, and you just raised it, I guess as a question, do cyclists feel safe?
Glad you asked that too. One thing that I talked about in my book is that people say to me, oh, well, I had this one video on my YouTube that I went down the waterfront and by the encampments, and I had so many hateful comments on that video that I had to turn off the comments. It was so racist and so degrading. And I thought, I will take that path any day over being on the road, having to deal with a big truck that passes me so close that I feel so scared. So I'm Brazilian. I really don't feel unsafe in downtown Winnipeg. I think a lot of it is perception and some kind of prejudice. Is that the word? In Portuguese, I would say prejudice, but a preconceived notion that I'm unsafe because everyone says it's unsafe, right? I don't feel for 1 second unsafe outside of the doors of Rice Building. When I'm walking down to Portage Place, there's a lot of people around. I mean, there used to be a lot more people around in early 2000, but I don't feel unsafe at all. Now, when I'm on the road and I have to share it with a truck driver, that really, really scares me. And I had one incident where I'm stopped at a stop sign and a driver pulled into me instead of his lane. Into me, a truck driver, and grazed my foot as he went. And I yelled and yelled and yelled. And he got off his truck and he says, "You cyclists never stop at the stop sign." And I was at the stop sign. And I have a pink helmet with a tiara. I wear pink. You can tell I'm a woman. And I thought, I wish I could have taken the path by the river, but I couldn't in this instance, And so, do I feel safe? No, but it has nothing to do with downtown residents at all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's also important to recognize that there is a difference between feeling unsafe and feeling uncomfortable. And when we are faced with the depths of human despair, we should feel uncomfortable. But I think it's important to recognize whether we are feeling unsafe or whether we're feeling uncomfortable, there is a difference. Now, that said, I am fully willing to acknowledge that there are situations where people are absolutely feeling unsafe. But downtown safety isn't its own issue, right? Cities are, again, complex ecosystems, and we have to recognize that all of that is connected to municipal finance. It is connected to city design. It is connected to bike lanes. It's connected to urban forestry. It all has interdependencies. Our city is not it's really just the highest level of cooperation between people in a city. And so when we see that our municipal corporation is struggling financially at the same time as our neighbors are struggling in the downtown or in our neighborhoods, that is connected. right? We are struggling as a city because we're struggling as a city. And so I think we need to, again, come back to this holistic approach of incremental fixes and that next smallest thing that we can do to address the struggles.
I'm glad you said that, because one of the things that I talk about in my book as well is that connectivity, and how in a car, the person sleeping on the bench is just a blur. But when you're riding your bike, it's a human. You can see the designs on his little blanket. You can see his backpack. You can see their face, and it becomes more than just a blur. It becomes part of your everyday, and you start thinking, is there something I can do? Right? And that's the magic of the bicycle, I think.
That's wonderful. Well, I think we can start queuing up some questions. I've got a couple questions in the queue here. One I was going to ask just if people are getting ready, but one to start thinking about. Best cycling movie? You can think about that as you come on down. Or, oh, okay, yeah.
All right. You got time. Hello, hello. All right. So as a preamble to the questions, can we agree that often the best answer is not the one that we intuitively think of first based on our previous experience?
Yeah, humility.
Okay. Then based on the conversation that was remembered from the radio conversation, there's a sense that like the driving mode is the least inconvenient way of getting around. And we're often affected by the way that we live, and the recent transit redesign has given us a lot to think about when it comes to what is it like to get around the city. And so many of us live and grow in a place where driving is the least inconvenient, simply because it's built that way. Given that, how can we begin effecting a change to that default way of thinking when so many people have a better experience using the driving mode of getting around than other ways of moving in the city? And how can we help change the conversation and help people see what might be possible?
I would take this one, I think. Wow, that's a really good question. What was your name?
Matthew.
Matthew, thank you, Matthew. You know, I think of all the times that I am riding home and I see the drivers piled up waiting, and I'm right by them, right? And I think, how convenient is that really, right? And I think of how many times I have to take the bus and I'm stuck in that mess. And I could have been home on my bike an hour earlier than I did. And I think that there is one trick, and only one trick, is to take your friend on a bike ride and say, and I do this all the time, I'll say, I'll go with you. And they're like, but I live across the city and I leave my house at 7. I say, it's okay, I have an e-bike. I'll get there and we'll ride together. I'm going to show it to you, and then you're going to do it. And I've said that to people, and they don't take me up on it, but they figure it out. And all it takes is a couple of rides, and they go, what was I doing? Why was I stuck in? Why didn't you tell me before? Right, Rod? Yeah, Rod is an example right here. And that's all it takes. But the reason people don't ride their bikes in Winnipeg is not because they're cold. It's not because they're lazy. It's because they're scared. We don't have the infrastructure, so build it and they will come. You know, everybody talks about there's so much car traffic on Wellington Crescent. Bikes are not the norm. No kidding. There's nowhere to go. It ends. It's dead ends, you know, from one end to another is, like I said, 1.5 kilometers of nothing safe. What, are you supposed to go on the sidewalk, right? So I think is taking your friend on a bike ride is the answer, and then they can't go back.
I agree with Patty. It's something that is going to happen incrementally, one person at a time, one trip at a time. We don't need everybody to switch modes tomorrow. Everybody's threshold is going to be different. So maybe they take one trip, they'll take the bus, or maybe they'll take one trip on a bike. And then, you know, another person the threshold will be a little bit harder. But the fact that taking a car is the most convenient mode for most trips in the city didn't happen on its own, right? This was 80 years of policy where we have prioritized moving in an automobile. So of course it is the most convenient. That's what we've prioritized, right? So we need to slowly shift the priorities over, right? And that is in parking regulations, it's in how we design streets, it's in all kinds of stuff. But literally the next thing is you have to look outside and see how do we make it easier to choose something else some of the time, right? And that may be like, oh, that bus stop is missing a bench. Or, oh, there's a branch sticking over this sidewalk that needs to be cut. Or maybe it's like Patty says, I'm gonna invite my friend out for a bike ride. It's one small thing, and everybody has to be participating. A city is built by many hands, and so it's not something we can like just expect city council or whoever to fix for us. We have a role, each one of us in building the city that we want to see, one small step at a time.
Right in the middle.
Well, good evening. Am I on? I don't know. Hello. My name's Cheryl. Thank you very much. I'm very interested to read your books. I'm wondering, in your book, do you have an outline of some solutions in terms of how we can get some more money or sustainable, to look at some of these problems? I'm going to be 72. I was born here in Winnipeg. My first realization was my first position professionally was going up to Churchill, Manitoba. And I worked at the health center, and I lived literally a 3-minute walk, okay, and to get to the health center and work. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing that I can go to work 3 minutes. Well, that changed my life in terms of thinking about how to get around. And when my husband and I bought our house, we bought our house in an area where we could deal with just having one car, even though with children and transporting and whatever, where we were close to transit, good, efficient transit. And I was working downtown, and I could get downtown in 15 minutes. It's not 3 minutes, it's 15 minutes, but it was good, it was affordable, it was efficient. My children, once they were old enough, I felt, okay, you can now travel the bus, and they did, to go back and forth to the school of choosing. And they survived. There's a lot of learning curves that happens at the age of 12 or whatever to be on the bus. I don't know about these days with what's going on. So that's an experience too. Now, going down, I have now moved downtown. I've been downtown for 14 years now. I absolutely love it. I'm very much into walking. And I believe you me, when I have things to do downtown, it's walking. It's not using. I do have a car, which I use because I need to for other things in my life. But anything downtown, it's walking. And I think, it bothers me when I see, in terms of city planning, the development that's happening outside, and it keeps growing and growing. The road infrastructure isn't there. You try going down McPhillips, at rush hour, like forget it. You are stuck in traffic for at least an hour to get from Notre Dame to down to wherever. It is absolutely ridiculous. And I think a lot of people, I think there has to be a mindset, I think in terms of, okay, for work, if you can manage your life where you are close to your job or have good, efficient travel, whether it be biking, whether it be transit, which is a mess right now. It's just, I don't know who did these changes, but it's not good. And I know people have been complaining. They are trying to make changes, which is good. We start off, and they did do a big survey, Downtown Biz, that has affected, everybody, So there's a lot to think about. In terms of safety, I've had the privilege to do a fair amount of traveling in my being. And I don't care what city you are, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Chicago, New York, everybody has a responsibility to be watching what's happening around them in terms of reading the climate. You see something that makes you feel uncomfortable, okay, you read that, okay, you try to avoid it, cross the street, do whatever to keep yourself safe. Where you're disengaging from, I mean, it's not solving the problem, but your own personal responsibility in making those decisions to keep yourself safe. I have never had an issue downtown. I know people that live in my building who have, and unfortunately, it's been maybe not being a little bit cautious in terms of who is around you and what's happening. So it's complex, for sure, as you have stated. So those are my comments. I don't know that I actually have a question.
Well, you did ask how do we find the money?
How do we find the money? Right, that was my
And so
question.
I don't
Yes,
want to spoil the ending of my book for you, but there is no finding the money. The amount of money that we need to sustain the city we have built does not exist. It is not an amount that we can find. It just does not exist. So our city and all cities in North America will have less infrastructure tomorrow than they do today. Now, that's either going to happen in an orderly fashion by narrowing roadways, replacing lanes with bike lanes or a sidewalk, by adding more stuff where we already have infrastructure, so through infill and mixed use, or it will happen suddenly and catastrophically, like the Arlington Bridge, like a major water main in Calgary, like a massive sinkhole in Saskatoon. It's already happening. We are abandoning infrastructure because we have no choice. You may not believe in money, but money believes in you. You cannot ignore the money. You cannot ignore it.
You're so cheery.
And so, but again, I feel hopeful because it's not hopeless. Like I said, there is a way forward where we can incrementally start doing the things that we need to do to get to a sustainable place. Obviously, we'd like to not continue making the same mistakes of the past. As we do that, we're gonna make mistakes. We just have to accept that. We'd rather those mistakes be small and recoverable than massive, right? billion-dollar mistakes. We don't want those kinds of mistakes. We'd rather have small $50,000 mistakes, $100 mistakes, and learn from that. And that is to me how we're going to get forward, because it's inevitable. Cities throughout North America will have less infrastructure tomorrow than they do today. It's our choice how we get there.
It's great. I know there's a couple of phases to this evening, and if there's one more question from the floor, then I think we can close the gap upstairs with some questions and some signing. Is that kind of the next step? Correct. Is there one more question? Excellent.
Hi, my name is Janelle. I kind of have a two-parter question. Part one is, I think what you guys are talking about is fantastic. A question that is increasingly common in young people is not engaging with politics or city council. There's too much red tape and you're too exhausted from work. So I guess part one of my question is, what are your insights on combating civil apathy and increasing engagement? And then part two is, when you do have people come out to vocalize their voices, often it's because they're very passionate or very against a cause. And there's not a lot of moderate voices that come out to vocalize. So when you are making those small tweaks to something, because I agree, it's better to get something out there and tweak it as you see it going along, but how do we ensure that all voices in our society are equally represented in the choices that we're making, even if they maybe aren't on the floor vocalizing their opinions?
My opinion is that the bike is the answer to both questions. And that the bike fixes everything. It's not my fault that it's true. But, what's your name? Janelle. Janelle, great question. Honestly, I'm really glad you asked. We've been asking that same question. How do we explain it so people can understand that it's easy and it's important, especially in an election year? So me and my friend Sam said, you know what? I know what we're going to do. We're going to explain it in a little girl podcast called Ballad Babes. We started it 3 weeks ago. It's go to ballotbabes.com. You can watch it. We are explaining step by step what everything means. What is the strong mayor model? Did you know that we have a strong mayor model? Yes, that's what we have here. So we explained it super easy. We are watching City Hall meetings while he's watching, and he's taking the clips that are important so that I can put it on there so you can understand. That's a tiny little piece, but it begins by looking around and going, why is this curb like this? Or why am I missing this thing here? Why is my library only open certain days? Why is this community club like this? Why is my pool closing? Why is there no swimming lessons? And then you start thinking, wait, this is all related. And it's not complex. And like I said, watch one meeting and you go, not only is it not rocket science, I am way smarter than someone. And that's what I wanted to say, but my editor didn't let me. Yeah. So pay attention. Honestly, to be very practical, go to my website, pattybikes.com. There's a lot of information. I'm not trying to plug it because I really don't. I make zero money doing all of this stuff. I have no idea if my books are selling. I have no idea.
We'll make dozens of dollars.
Dozens. But what I do know is that we need change now, and you should be running for council. Yes, just with what you just said, I would like to know where you live because I will get behind you. And that's what we need to do, is we need to start getting behind each other and helping each other get there, because it's not that freaking hard. I'm not running because I need to be the loudmouth that makes people run. Right?
Maybe we'll have your bike run.
I am, to add on to what Patty is saying, yes, all of that. But also recognizing that getting involved at the city council level, whether that is by running to be on council, or by going and presenting in delegation or writing to your councillor, that is only one part of what it means to be civically engaged, right? Civic engagement starts at your house, right? It starts with you, with your neighbors. It starts with, oh, there's garbage on my street. I'm going to pick it up, or I'm going to organize a neighborhood cleanup. Oh, there's weeds in the garden beds at the park here. Well, I'll just pick it because I'm here. It starts with these little steps, right? And it doesn't need to be, I'm going to run for office, right? You don't have to start there. You can
But
start.
she is.
You can start there, but you don't have to. If that seems super daunting, scale it back to the neighborhood level. If that's still too daunting, scale it back to your street level. If that's too daunting, scale it back to just like your next door neighbor, right? And up the hallway or across the street or whatever. Start where you are, and do the next smallest thing for something that you care about, right? It's not hard to go for a walk in your neighborhood and see some stuff that you're like, I wish this was better. So then identify those things and say, what is the next smallest thing I can do to make this 1% better, right? It could be write an email to your counselor, or it could be just pick up that piece of trash, or it could be, whatever. There's a million things. Could be organize a movie night in your neighborhood park. Like, it could be 1,000 things. You don't have to constrain yourself as what it can be. Identify what the next smallest thing that can make things a little bit better. And then tomorrow, start again, and again, and again, and again, and you will influence people, you will bring people with you, and you will build a movement for a better city for everybody.
And I'm going to take this opportunity to put a plug into the University of Winnipeg. You want to take a step further back, we've got some awesome courses on urban civic politics. Get you involved in the classroom first, then unleash you on rebuilding the city of Winnipeg and beyond. But with that, I think maybe a round of applause for our authors. I know there's probably lots of questions burning, and there'll be some time as we can shift ourselves to the mezzanine layer. Yeah.
I also want to tell you that my friend Robin is here. Robin is waving back there. If you want to hear more news about what's going on and issues that are pressing, give your name and email to Robin, because she'll connect you with some people that will just send you emails and say, hey, here's a little thing you can do. So should we take some names?
And I guess one more plug for the book series. You'll Pay for This and That'll Never Work Here are out now. Please get your copy. And Out on a Limb is available for pre-order to be released May 19th. So you can pre-order it already and you'll probably get it before the launch date. So just saying.
Ooh, wonderful.
Exclusive.
Thank you.
Yeah, and again, many thanks. And thanks to all of you for coming to the University of Winnipeg. We'll see you on the mezzanine. And and thanks, Sarah. Yeah, wonderful.